He didn't mean to find it. A single step in the mud revealed a diamond so rare, so massive, it could rewrite a man's destiny. But Solomon wasn't free. He was a prisoner, trapped in the grip of rebels, forced to mine stones for someone else's greed. Just moments earlier, a fellow miner had been shot for hiding a pebble-sized gem in his mouth. And yet, in that moment he held a diamond the size of his thumb. The kind that could buy anything: freedom, family. But what do you do when everyone around you is willing to take you out for it? This wasn't always his life. Just days before, he was an ordinary fisherman in Sierra Leone. A father. A husband. A man whose only concerns were feeding his family and getting his son to school on time. His son, Dia, was bright and ambitious. He dreamed of being a doctor and walked 5 kilometers each day just to attend class. Solomon waited outside the school that afternoon when everything changed. Armed rebels stormed the village without warning, spraying bullets and torching homes. The attackers showed no mercy, taking out civilians, even children, without hesitation. His world collapsed in seconds. In the chaos, Solomon managed to help his wife and kids flee. But he was captured, his fate sealed by a rebel who looked at his strong arms and said, "This one's worth more alive." So, Solomon was sent deep in the jungle to the mines and forced into hard labor. Which brings us back here. And then fate struck. A nearby pump explosion sent geysers of muddy water sky high. Rebel guards turned. Solomon's heart jackhammered. In that moment, he crouched and wedged the gem between 2 dirt-caked toes, then sold the act of a man with an urgent stomach, asking to relieve himself. But the rebel captain, one-eyed, scarred, known as Captain Poison, quickly trailed him. He confronted Solomon and gave a full search, patting down his torso, legs, arms, but luckily the diamond, pressed deep under the arch of his foot, went undetected. Solomon continued into the bush and found a dry patch of earth beneath a bare tree. He dug with frantic fingers, buried the diamond and covered it with leaves and soil. However, just as he stood to breathe, he felt the cold, unmistakable press of a gun barrel against the back of his skull. The commander had followed him again. "You think I'm stupid?" Right as Solomon was going to give up the gem, the ground exploded. Government forces had launched a surprise assault. Fighting and chaos erupted. The commander went down wounded. Solomon quickly bolted through the chase back into the bush and buried the stone beneath the roots of a dead baobab tree, then was quickly captured by the government forces. Taken to a prison compound, he barely had time to rest before fate turned on him once more. Standing in a cell, Solomon was shocked to see a familiar face arrive to the compound. The very rebel captain he thought perished at the mine. One ragged eye locked a gaze with him and screamed, "That man hides a pink diamond as big as my fist. Riches to whoever finds it." The other prisoners froze. Then they all turned toward Solomon, eyes gleaming with hunger and suspicion. Solomon panicked, stripped off his clothes, screamed that he had nothing. But the words barely mattered. Some believed him. Most didn't. And among the crowd was a quiet man watching everything. A man named Danny. A smuggler. A survivor. And the kind of man who knew exactly what a stone like that was worth. Danny didn't believe in causes. He believed in survival. Born to white Rhodesian parents and raised amid conflict, Danny was shaped by war. As a boy, he watched his family get torn apart. His mother taken out, his father beheaded. By 19 he was already a soldier. By 20, a mercenary. And now, just another smuggler working the brutal diamond pipeline in Sierra Leone. But Danny wasn't sloppy. He was sharp, efficient, and above all, self-interested. His latest operation involved getting diamonds across the border disguised as livestock. One of the sheep had been sliced open and stitched shut, the diamonds hidden beneath its skin. Danny posed as a magazine journalist, hired a few locals, and tried to move the herd unnoticed. But this time something went wrong. At the last checkpoint, the ruse fell apart. The soldiers were too curious. The sheep didn't pass inspection. Before he knew it, Danny was arrested and hauled off to prison. At first, it felt like a setback. Then he overheard an injured rebel commander, his face half wrapped in bloodied cloth, yelling at another prisoner, screaming about a pink diamond. That man Solomon. Danny's ears perked up. He didn't need details. Just the words pink diamond and buried. And suddenly this prison cell didn't feel like bad luck anymore. Danny was bailed out within hours. His people on the outside still had pull. As soon as he hit the streets, he made one call: to get Solomon out. No matter what it cost. A pink diamond that size? With something like that, Danny could disappear. Escape the continent. Cut ties with every dangerous deal he'd ever made. Back at his hotel, Danny pried open one of his molars. Hidden inside was a small diamond, his emergency fund. He spat it into his palm, a tooth bloodied beside it. He wouldn't need that backup plan anymore. Not once he got his hands on Solomon's diamond. He stepped outside to exchange currency. While he was gone, a man slipped into his room. At the same time, Solomon, confused and still dazed, was quietly released from jail. A group of unknown men handed him cash and walked away. He didn't ask why. He didn't trust anyone. He just wanted to find his family. Now his only mission was to piece that life back together. Meanwhile, Danny visited a bar to order a weapon from the owner. It was part of the plan. Always be armed. Always stay 2 moves ahead. He met someone unexpected, Maddie Bowen. She was sharp, beautiful, and not easily fooled. A journalist working on a story about brutal diamonds. Danny saw it for what it was, trouble. The kind of woman who asked too many questions. He tried brushing her off. She saw right through him. "You're a smuggler," she said, calm as ever. Danny didn't deny it. But he didn't confirm it either. He didn't like reporters. They talked too much, got too close, and always thought they could change the world with a photo. Later that night, when Danny returned to his hotel, he saw the mess. Drawers yanked open. Clothes scattered. It wasn't a robbery. Someone had been searching for something specific. And that someone was working for Colonel Cutsey. The colonel was a powerful man, head of a brutal mercenary group operating across Africa. Danny had worked under him for years, but he was tired of playing second fiddle. Unfortunately, the colonel now knew about the pink diamond too. Danny was summoned to the colonel's estate. He welcomed him with fake smiles and veiled threats. "I hear there's a stone," he said. "You bring it to me and we're square. You walk." The colonel picked up a handful of red soil, let it fall through his fingers and smirked. "This is your home," he said. "You'll never leave Africa." Danny said nothing. But inside he was already planning. He had no intention of handing that diamond over. Not to the colonel. Not to anyone. He just had to get Solomon to talk. Maddie didn't come to Africa to be charmed by men like Danny. She came to tell the truth. A seasoned journalist from the US, Maddie was determined to expose the global web of brutal diamond trafficking. The smugglers, the warlords, and the polished corporations that quietly profited while innocent people bled. She didn't trust men like Danny. Men who carried weapons, lied for a living, and walked through war like it was a game. But she also knew he was her best shot at a real story. The night they met, she saw it in his eyes. This was a man who knew things. Not just surface-level stuff, but names, routes, contacts. And Danny, despite his instincts, kept talking to her. At first it was just banter. A little flirtation. A test of boundaries. But Maddie didn't play games. She cut straight to the chase. "I want names. I want proof." Danny wasn't interested. "You want to help Africa?" he scoffed. "Stay out of it." But she didn't back down. Instead, she followed him, pressed him, poked at the cracks in his cynicism. She called out his excuses. Reminded him that the blood on his diamonds was real. "You think you're different?" he snapped. "You think your country's clean? You want to sell your magazine." Maddie didn't flinch. "And what do you want? A yacht? Better bar tab? You're part of the problem." The argument left them both rattled, but the seed had been planted. Back at the bar, Danny returned to pick up the pistol he'd ordered. The bartender handed it over with a grim look. "The rebels will hit the city tomorrow, you should leave." Danny tucked the weapon away and stepped outside, only to find Maddie waiting. Again. She wasn't giving up. She wanted the truth and she knew Danny had it. They argued. This time it got personal. "You smugglers, you pretend you don't care but you're just scared. You've seen too much and done too much and now you act like nothing matters." Danny fired back. "You think diamonds are the problem? You think little girls in America stop dreaming of fairy tale weddings? The demand comes from your world, not mine." So they left in disagreement. The next day, the streets of Freetown were about to explode. The rebels were closing in fast. Meanwhile, Solomon was lost in the city. He wandered the streets asking about refugee camps, aid workers, anything that might lead to his family. He had one purpose: find them. That was all that mattered. Amid the chaos, Danny found Solomon wandering the crowded camp, hollow-eyed. "You'll never find him on your own," he said. "You think you're the only one who's lost family in this war?" Solomon didn't answer. Danny grabbed his arm. "I can help you. But you help me too." Still, Solomon hesitated. With the city collapsing and soldiers panicking, he had no other choice. The RUF had entered the city. Panic spread like wildfire. They ran through crumbling streets, dodging bullets and bodies. Rebel fighters advanced like a swarm, mowing down anyone in their path. The government troops responded in kind, firing without aiming, hitting both friend and foe. Danny yanked Solomon into a side alley. "Move." It was total war. By some miracle, they made it to a ruined hotel on the city's edge. Danny kicked open a door and pulled Solomon inside. The building had been abandoned for weeks. They waited until nightfall. When tensions momentarily eased, Danny crept to the rooftop and scanned the horizon. There was one possible escape route left, the eastern checkpoint leading out of the city. But it was guarded. 3 rebel soldiers were stationed there. So Danny came up with a plan. He gave Solomon a rebel uniform he'd taken off a dead soldier. "You're the guard. I'm the prisoner." Danny struck first. He pulled a pistol from his waistband and fired at 2 of them. The third turned to run. Danny dropped him with a single shot. It was over in seconds. Solomon stood frozen, staring at his borrowed uniform. "That's how you survive," Danny said. "You move first." From there, they made their way to another refugee zone, this one more secure, run by foreign aid groups. It was here that Danny found a familiar face, a British war correspondent named Rupert. Through him, he reconnected with Maddie. She looked stunned when she saw him, dust-covered, exhausted, still alive. Danny didn't waste time. He wanted that diamond. But to get it, he needed Solomon. And to get Solomon, he had to help him. So Danny made a deal. "I'll give you the names, I'll tell you everything. But you get me access to the UNHCR records. Help Solomon find his family." Maddie's eyes shifted to Solomon. She could see the weight on his face, the brokenness. "Fine," she said. "But if I help, you talk. Everything. No holding back." Danny nodded. "Deal." A few calls later, she had access to the UN's refugee database. Within hours, they located Solomon's wife and daughters. They were alive, in a massive refugee camp in neighboring Guinea. More than 1 million refugees. All with stories. All trying to survive. But Dio wasn't listed. Still, there was hope. Solomon scanned the crowd like a man possessed. Dozens of faces passed by, none familiar. Until suddenly he stopped. His wife. His daughters. They ran to each other. Embraced. Held one another like they'd never let go. But Dio was missing. Solomon collapsed to the ground, whispering his son's name like a prayer. Worse, rumors confirmed that many boys taken from Solomon's region had been conscripted into rebel armies. Turned into soldiers. The news hit Solomon like a bullet to the chest. He'd seen what happened to those boys. The brainwashing. The cruelty. How the rebels' fear and violence to turn children into something else. He knew if Dia had been taken, he'd be unrecognizable now. Amid the chaos, Danny found Solomon wandering the crowded camp, hollow-eyed, muttering Dia's name under his breath. The reunion with his wife and daughters had given him one brief moment of peace. But without his son, it meant nothing. Meanwhile, Danny remained fixated on obtaining the diamond, meticulously planning to retrieve it from its hidden location. But reaching it required navigating dangerous terrain controlled by various warring factions. Their only feasible option was to infiltrate Maddie's team. Maddie herself, however, struggled internally. Educated at a prestigious university, she could have led an affluent life back in New York, but instead pursued a mission to fight global injustices. Yet despite her efforts, her articles and photos had little impact beyond stirring minor sympathy, unable to genuinely alleviate Africa's suffering. Determined to create real change, she sought concrete evidence to expose the architects behind the blood diamond industry. Possibly influenced by her passion or perhaps driven solely by greed, Danny revealed the inner workings of the blood diamond supply chain to Maddie. Diamonds smuggled across borders were certified as domestic production through bribery, enabling legal international trade. Vandecap controlled this network, hoarding diamonds to maintain high prices and perpetuating war to monopolize supply. Danny promised direct proof but insisted on acquiring the pink diamond first for fear of lethal repercussions. With this, Maddie and Danny established a cautious alliance, agreeing to cooperate toward their respective goals. The following morning, disguised as part of Maddie's crew, Danny and Solomon managed to sneak into the convoy. But their journey quickly descended into chaos when rebels launched a surprise attack. Amidst the mayhem, Solomon's compassion shone through. He saved a child from certain doom. Finding the bus too crowded, the group boarded a small truck instead. Ironically, what seemed like a setback became a blessing. The bus was completely destroyed in the ambush. Taking advantage of the confusion, they escaped deep into the jungle, only to encounter a group of local guerrillas. Fortunately, these fighters didn't shoot indiscriminately. With peaceful gestures and Maddie snapping photos, the tension eased. Surprisingly, the guerrillas offered refuge, leading them to a secluded estate hidden from the horrors of war. The place felt like paradise. Once child soldiers lived there, now healed through patience, education, and love, reclaiming the innocence they had lost. This sanctuary existed because of its wise caretaker, a man who believed that no person was truly good or evil, only their choices in the moment made the difference. Even the cruelest person, he believed, could still find meaning in a single act of kindness. Danny listened in silence, reflecting. That night, with the warmth of palm wine and the sound of children's songs, he opened up to Maddie. Danny revealed his origins. A white man born in Africa, his mother had been killed, and his father beheaded when he was just 9. War had stolen everything. By 19 he was fighting under the colonel as a mercenary, targeting black Africans in what he believed was a noble cause. But he later realized it had never been about peace or justice, it was always about money. Disillusioned, he left the army and became a diamond smuggler. Now all he wanted was to escape and live in peace. That rare pink diamond represented his final chance. Seeing the anguish on his face, Maddie gently held his hand. A connection between them began to form. The next morning, the estate's caretaker escorted them toward their destination. But en route, they were ambushed by a rebel child army. Hoping to reason with them, the caretaker tried to speak. But the young soldiers, desensitized and unfeeling, answered with bullets. Danny quickly drew his weapon and used the moment of confusion to accelerate the truck away. With the caretaker wounded, they diverted to the colonel's camp for medical help. Fortunately, the caretaker survived and Maddie joined the departing refugees. But trouble was brewing. The colonel prepared to head to Kono himself and demanded that Danny come along to recover the diamond. Danny knew that once he was with the army he'd never get a share, let alone the diamond. After leaving the tent, he rushed to Maddie and begged her to distract the guards so he could sneak into the armory, steal weapons, and escape with Solomon. Maddie understood the risk and knew it might be the last time she saw Danny. With tears in her eyes, she nodded. Danny handed her the evidence he had gathered, just in case he didn't survive. Thanks to her help, Danny acquired the weapons, and the two prepared to go their separate ways. After all they'd endured, something real had grown between them. But now they stood at a crossroads. They each had their own missions. Before parting, Maddie gave Danny her office, home, and mobile numbers. This time she broke her own rules and took the first step. With their emotional farewell behind them, Danny and Solomon resumed their journey. As they walked, Danny asked more about the diamond. Learning it was over 100 carats, Solomon felt a new sense of hope, like the promise of freedom was finally within reach. That night, danger returned. A rebel vehicle passed by, and Solomon spotted his son, Dia, among the soldiers. In his desperation, he made a noise, nearly giving them away. They narrowly escaped, but Danny exploded in fury, threatening Solomon with a knife. Danny warned him, mess up again and it could cost him his life. But to Solomon, his son meant more than any gem. Even under threat, he insisted on searching for diameter. The two clashed, physically and emotionally, but ultimately Danny backed down. They reached the rebel camp, but Dia was nowhere in sight. They pressed on. At first they'd only talked about diamonds, but now they opened up about their lives. Danny even promised to help save diameter. After a long journey, they finally arrived at the mine where the diamond was buried. The mine was swarming with guards. Knowing they couldn't break in alone, Danny radioed the colonel and gave him the exact location, asking him to launch an attack and create a distraction. It was a dangerous gamble, but there were no other options. While chaos reigned, they could sneak in, grab the diamond, and flee. But Solomon hesitated. He was certain Dia was inside and the crossfire could kill him. That night, while Danny slept, Solomon slipped away and snuck into the rebel camp. But instead of a reunion, Dia, now deeply indoctrinated, saw his father as the enemy and turned him in. Danny, realizing Solomon was missing, followed. From the shadows, he watched helplessly. The one-eyed rebel commander returned and threatened Solomon with a machete, demanding the diamond. Like Danny, the commander wanted to sell the gem and escape the horrors of war. Solomon nearly surrendered. Danny, hidden nearby, was panicking. Just then, the colonel's helicopter arrived, unleashing firepower that shattered the rebel ranks. Amid the chaos, Danny focused on saving Dia, knowing it was the only way to get Solomon's trust. He risked his life to pull Dia to safety. At the same time, Solomon seized the chance for revenge and ended the commander with an iron bar. The rebels were wiped out. All eyes turned to Solomon, who now held the key. He alone knew where the diamond was. He kept silent until the colonel offered Danny a deal: make Solomon talk or both would die. Danny brought out Dia, forcing Solomon to comply. They returned to the burial site, which had already been disturbed by other scavengers. Solomon began digging. Both men knew that once the gem was found, their lives were in danger. Danny asked for a cigarette and was refused, a small moment revealing mounting tension. Finally, Solomon faked finding the diamond. Danny used the distraction to off a guard, while Solomon attacked the colonel. Danny slipped into the trees, then circled back and finished the job. Solomon unearthed the real gem. But Danny had been wounded in the fight. Before they could escape, Dia blocked their path with a gun. Solomon pleaded with his son, whose humanity was barely intact. In a moment of clarity, Dia recognized his father. The reunion was cut short by another attack and they fled. Danny insisted on carrying the diamond and contacted his ally to arrange a plane pickup, on a mountaintop 10 kilometers away. Struggling, he pushed forward but soon collapsed. Solomon offered to carry him. As they climbed, Danny realized he wouldn't survive. He pulled out the diamond, his life's ambition, and handed it to Solomon, along with Maddie's contact info and a warning not to trust his partner. Then he stayed behind to hold off the enemy. Once Solomon and Dia were safe, Danny called Maddie on a satellite phone. Her joy turned to sorrow as she realized he was dying. Overhead, the helicopter arrived too late. Danny looked at the earth, accepting that this land would be his beginning and end. He told Maddie he was exactly where he was meant to be. With those final words, he closed his eyes in peace. Later, Solomon and Maddie traveled to London. In exchange for the diamond, Solomon was reunited with his family. Maddie recorded everything and used the evidence to expose the blood diamond trade. Solomon testified publicly, sharing Africa's story with the world. By May 2003, 40 nations signed the Kimberley Process, requiring diamonds to be sealed and certified at the source. Without it, they couldn't be sold. Diamonds, once just stones, had become icons of love and wealth. But behind the sparkle was greed, exploitation, and bloodshed. Laws may stop some trafficking, but they can't erase human desire. Telling people not to buy certain things won't stop ambition. The real villain isn't the diamond. It's the endless appetite for more. True peace lies in recognizing our own hypocrisy and reconciling with our desires. Because what's truly tainted isn't the gem, it's the greed behind it. That's the end of this recap. Thanks for watching. What would you have done in Solomon's place? If you enjoyed this story, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below. See you in the next video.